What's one decision or action you're most proud of when it comes to caregiving or future planning?
Hmm. Um, we had some good guidance early on to to build community, and I don't think I really knew what that meant in the early years. But as time went along, we started to recognize that our daughter was building her own community, um, and then the message for us was more how to hang on to that community, and I think we've done a good job with that. She has our daughter has a network of supportive friends that we asked intentionally, to join and to invest in that relationship with her, and that's been a really really good. Um, it was a good move on our part to do that. And then, of course, that's grown into a microboard, which also provides something, a different kind of community that's going to hold some of the role that we as parents hold right now. Um, and so I think that's probably the best thing that we've done, and when people ask me, I always say, build a team for yourself, build a team, with your family, with your son or daughter with Down syndrome.
If you could go back, is there anything you would have started earlier?
I can't think of anything that we would have started earlier. I feel as if, uh, it always felt in the early years like we were just trying to get our feet under us and something else would come our way, like an additional diagnosis or, some kind of a family challenge. So I think, again, I think we had some really good advice early on, which was whenever there was a change to make sure that uh, our funders knew about that, so that the people in our provincial ministry were aware that there had been an additional diagnosis or a new change, to always make sure that the people who we needed to hear this had heard it from us, and so that things were updated. And um, and so I think we did a pretty good job of that. But as I look back on it, I think, well, maybe that's something, that advocacy for our family, for our daughter, is something we could have started earlier.
How are you helping others understand your loved one's needs and preferences, especially when planning for future caregiving?
Um, I think there's some really important ways that we have tried to communicate the kinds of things that others will need to know about our daughter. One of the ways is that we've created a caregiver guide. So there is a Google Doc with lots of information on it that can be accessed by our worker's phone or our facilitator's phone. Um, and so the important information is there. Um, I think we have gotten used to talking about things and have helped our daughter to find the words to talk about um, some of what she needs. And so I really think that's the most important piece is the how to grow your child into self-advocacy, and um, even if there are details that they may not be able to articulate or understand, um, clear yeses and nos, um, and lots of opportunity to think about the things that are important to them and be able to respond to those. I think that's probably the most important part of future planning.
What's one thing you've learned about navigating systems as an advocate for someone with Down syndrome?
Um, Navigating systems can be really frustrating. I think the most important thing that I've learned is that we can't rely on government systems to make a good life for our daughter or for us. Um, there's lots of things that we can build on our own. There's lots of things that we can watch for in her own communication of what she wants in her life that we can then use as cues um, to put things in place or to build resources or develop the kind of community that she wants. I think it's it's really, I caution people about relying too much on government. And that goes right from the school system right through to what happens after school. Families and the community around families is I think where so much of the good learning and support happens.
What helps you as a caregiver recharge when the caregiving feels overwhelming?
Yeah, recharging as a caregiver is very challenging sometimes, especially when things in the broader world and the broader community aren't um, seem to be going against some of your own values. And I think so. I think for me, uh, being somehow connected to nature is a really important part of how I care for myself. Um, and also some kind of movement, whether that's yoga or hiking or some way to stay in my body and not just go off into my anxious brain. Um, the other thing that I think is important is just reaching out to the community that we've built um, and letting them know what's happening and where some of the challenges are lying. So yeah, I'd say nature, movement, community, and I'm also someone that has a consistent art practice. So my art practice is a really important part of how I say what I need to say and take care of myself.
But what keeps you going on the hard days?
Mm. What keeps me going on the hard days? Um, I think that, and the hard days are the days that I don't have the energy to leave the house, or I don't even have the energy to, make art or any of those things. And so I think I think there's a lot there's a lot of really good stuff within the relationship that I have with our daughter. And one of the really good pieces is that she reminds us to slow down. And she reminds us that she's having a marvelous Monday or a terrific Tuesday or a, wonderful Wednesday. And, she can say that when she's been sick or these things. And so I feel like, when I don't have the opportunity to use other coping ways of coping, um, she just really grounds me and helps me to remember that she's having a good life and that she's just taking it one moment at a time. And that's good to remember.
How has your caregiving role changed as your loved one has gotten older?
That's a really good question because our caregiving role has changed and it's changed because we're older. And so we don't, we've always been pretty laid back about kind of what I'll call the rush of family life, and tried to slow things down, but it's even slower than it was because, we have other things we want to do that are important. And so I think we've tried to reprioritize um, our own uh, list of things that we want to do in life. So I think that's part of it. And we also just don't have the energy that we did have. It's changed because there have been health considerations with our daughter that have reminded us that that there's lots to learn about aging and Down syndrome. And so we have kind of upped our game in that respect, finding resources for aging. Now, our daughter's just 32, but because of some of the assumptions about Down syndrome that are out there in the medical community, that, the link to Alzheimer's and things like that, people, I feel like, are ready to jump to that conclusion. And so there's more advocacy involved where it's, so we're noticing some changes, some cognitive changes. We recognize that there's a connection with Alzheimer's. But she's under 40. So let's look at all the possibilities. Let's make sure that there's not something else going on that we're missing. And so I think that's changed a lot for us. Is we were riding kind of happily along, and then all of us started showing signs of our age, and so we just have to be really much more mindful and find good resources, and also good community. Like here we have there's a lot of families who know each other well, but in those families people are becoming unwell. People our age are developing serious medical issues and dying. And so the conversations around what happens when mom and dad can no longer care for you, that's why you have a microboard. Let's talk about that some more. But I think families also tend to rely on, we're relying on ourselves more, or on each other more as our kids get older and as we get older.